Fit, active, healthy, happy, enjoying the prime of your life. Looking out for your health and wellness, this is Health Talk with Fred Lowry from Lowry Drug in Statesville. Visit Fred at his store, conveniently located on Hartness Road in Statesville.
Good afternoon. This is Fred Lowry of Lowry Drug in Statesville, pharmacist and doctor of natural medicine. This series of Health Talk was pre-recorded for November the 14th, 2025. It's a beautiful fall, strange weather, warm and cold, but pretty typical of North Carolina. This program is intended to share knowledge and information based on my research and experience. It's not intended to offer individual advice, nor does it replace a one-on-one relationship with a qualified healthcare professional. Your daily choices are yours and have more to do with your health than anyone in the healthcare field. My hopes are that this show will empower you with knowledge to take a more proactive approach to your health. Some of my sources include, but are not limited to, various news health feeds, Epic Times, Mercola, Children's Health Defense, PubMed, and various Substack posts. It's many times a week things have come across my desk about COVID-19 vaccination, and I've covered this a couple of times. Recent research in the International Journal of Research in Medical Science. This was of October, actually accepted October the 30th, 2025. So it's very fresh, but it talks about the implications for the central nervous system. And so the background is neuroinflammation, inflammation of the nerves, conditions involving the central nervous system are on the rise, while the reason supposedly is currently not known. But there's a parallel in the rise of COVID-19 vaccinations associated with this, and so they wanted to explore the association between central nervous system infection and vaccinations. Keep in mind that there were a lot of nerve-related symptoms related to both getting COVID and COVID-19 vaccinations or injections, or they weren't really vaccinations. But I won't cover this entire study, but basically the conclusion is all the safety signals reported are concerning and support an immediate global ban on the COVID-19 vaccination program. This is not the first scientific paper that has called on that, and I think it's certainly a valid point, and it would be my thoughts that no one would get any more of those products. Also in the news, this was kind of interesting with the Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy announced Monday, November the 10th, that the FDA will remove the black box warnings for hormone replacement therapy products used to treat menopausal women. If a black box warning is basically a major thing for the FDA, and that if there is a black box warning, there is a high association with some type of negative effect for that particular medication. And so that was true for hormone replacement, although it wasn't really correct if you understand the whole picture there. So it previously highlighted that there was a higher risk of cardiovascular disease, breast cancer, probable dementia, and so this labeling is no longer going to appear. And apparently there's 75 million American women on hormone replacement products. The decision followed a review of the evidence and the criticism of the 2002 Women's Health Initiative study. The FDA commissioner, along with Kennedy, argued that the study was flawed due to its focus on older women and outdated hormone formulations. So the FDA will retain its black box warning for endometrial cancer risk associated with taking estrogen alone products. Now, that's really important because these are people that are individuals who are taking estrogen and not taking progesterone. Progesterone is the, if you will, the balancer for estrogen. In my opinion and many others, you should never take estrogen without progesterone. The possible exception would be maybe a occasional estrogen product along for vaginal use. So, and by the way, the reasoning for this, and I think our medicine is kind of stuck in this thought process. Many years ago, women were taking Premarin, and if they were taking Premarin alone, the side effect, or effect, if you will, was that you had too much cell growth, and there was endometrial cancer as a result of that. And that was really largely due to the imbalance or estrogen dominance, if you will, imbalance between estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen and progesterone in a woman's cycle, the first 2 weeks is mostly estrogen dominant, the second 2 weeks progesterone dominant. So it's a balance on that 28-day cycle. So years ago they discovered, if you give a progestin, which is the name of a drug class that includes progesterone, they primarily gave Provera, or the generic name was medroxyprogesterone. And that prevented the overgrowth of cells in the uterus when taking Premarin. There's a vast difference between progesterone and medroxyprogesterone. And so the logic there is also is if you don't have a uterus, then you don't need progesterone, because the original thought was just basically to protect the body. But if you talk to any woman, they will tell you this hormone cycle and their hormone system is a total body experience. It's not just happening in one particular area of the body. And so I think this is a very flawed thought process that still persists today. This is something that was taught in pharmacy school and in schools of medicine in the 70s. And it, shockingly to me, it's still taught that way today. That's the thought process. The students, I know the students coming out of pharmacy school, that's what they were taught. This really is just kind of an illustration of how slow things happen. That's over 40 years ago. And so we continue with the same process, the same thought process, the same educational process, even though this whole concept of hormone replacement has changed dramatically, particularly in the understanding of using bioidentical hormone replacement. Bioidentical means it's the same hormone that your body uses. I'll explain more about that later, but it's a completely different language when you change the structure of a hormone. Completely different language. Progesterone maintains pregnancy. The medroxyprogesterone in the same drug class will cause the baby to be aborted. Completely different message, and structurally that chemistry looks pretty close, pretty much the same. The same's true in the message of estrogen and testosterone, much more similar, but that message, as you know, is completely different. We're going to cover more of this topic when we come back up on a break here. Stay tuned for more help. to Health Talk. This is Fred Lowry Drug in Statesville, talking about the announcement Kennedy made about the changes in warnings related to hormone replacement for women. He did state that this move ends a decade, or decades really, of what he described as bad science that distorts the understanding of hormone replacement, emphasizing a return to evidence-based medicine to empower women in their healthcare decisions. You know, the term evidence-based medicine is very popular, and what that means is you have a study that backs up what you're doing. That's actually pretty rare, and there's a lot of problems with such studies, and particularly the fact that a lot of them are you cannot duplicate. That's pretty well documented. So, you know, what I advocate really is a little more of an understanding of how the body works, and understanding that the blueprint that we have for that is physiology, which is a lot more hard science in many ways, with the exception of the interactions of systems and that complexity. But nonetheless, they describe the previous warnings as one of the greatest screw-ups in the last 24 years of modern medicine. Maybe one of the greatest one happened about 4 years ago. So here we have the issue, and that they basically assert that hormone replacement therapy, and I would say when done correctly, is helpful for menopause symptoms, and can reduce, it says, can reduce heart disease risk by 50%, bone fractures by 50%, cognitive decline by 60%, UTIs, we know those are often related in the elderly to hormone balancing, and that's eliminated by 50%. So also the FDA did announce the approval of 2 generic versions of Premarin conjugated estrogens in over 30 years. I do not recommend conjugated estrogens or Premarin, which is hormones taken from pregnant mares, Premarin, the contrived name for that. That's not human estrogen. It's not bioidentical. So not really in support of that. But there are other hormonal, non-hormonal medications for moderate to severe hot flashes that are approved, which we'll talk about. They're primarily antidepressants, which is also not really treating the issue. So basically, the concept is that you would use bioidentical hormones. These hormones are chemically identical to those that are naturally produced in the human body, and so that's a little bit of a confusing thing for some. But these hormones address menopause, hormone changes in women, and andropause, hormone changes in men. They are actually made from a plant source, which some people think that's a good thing, but it's really immaterial. They use a plant steroid, and they take that as the starting material, and then chemically modify it in the laboratory to match the same molecular structure, as human hormones. So these are used to relieve symptoms, and so sometimes it's the thought process is we're relieving symptoms, and that's primarily the way modern medicine works. It's not that we're filling the tank, so to speak, in hormones that are no longer there. And of course, as we age, your hormone production diminishes. In men, their testosterone levels drop. They can end up with more estrogen, actually, and be a little more maternal than they were, let's say, in their when they were in their teens or 20s. By the same token, women, as they're moving away from their reproductive years, those hormones change as well. So there are we call these bioidentical hormones, the ones that are produced the way the body makes them. They're chemically identical to the same that the body makes. And there are different products out there. There are commercially available products that made by drug manufacturers. And then there are also compounded medications by compounders, such as myself, where we're making individual products for individual people. And so it's a little more customized approach. And this says that the FDA bioidenticals have undergone rigorous testing for safety and efficacy. Interesting. And in contrast, they say that the compounded bioidenticals are custom made by pharmacies for individual patients, but are not subject to FDA approval, which is that part is true. And they interpret that as their quality and consistency have not been independently verified. So I would say that in terms of quality and consistency, these products are definitely of quality and consistency. And drug manufacturers, as an example, are allowed a plus or minus of 10% potency. Compounders are much tighter than that, and I imagine that manufacturers may be as well. I've not seen those numbers, but when we're making something and weighing it out, we are a lot more exact on a small batch than when you're making larger batches, and that's just a well-known manufacturing thing. The larger the batch, the more likely you have for error. So the FDA does state that the risk and benefits of bioidentical hormones are likely similar to those of the FDA hormone therapies. So maybe not. I'm not sure that's a valid statement. But one of the important things to remember here is that you should always use progesterone if you're taking estrogen, and that's pretty much universal. I would say that there are a couple ways that people determine ways to measure hormones in the body. So the concept would be, let's just say with a man, you're measuring blood levels of testosterone, and they're low, so you decide you're going to fill the tank, so to speak, add testosterone either in a cream form or an injectable, and then you're monitoring the blood levels. Blood levels are not always reflective of levels of hormones in the body, the tissue levels. So you can think about it like a compartment, if you will. The blood is a different compartment than tissue or cells. And so saliva testing comes into play closer to cellular levels. There's urine testing for the metabolites of hormones. And I would say that the important thing is that you're monitoring those. So the idea would be that you assess the individual, you find out what's low, and you try to replace that, and then continue to monitor those levels. So as a side note there, the non-hormonal medications, basically they're approved drugs, but they're antidepressants. They're SSRIs, which are drugs that keep serotonin in the space where it's acting in the nerves, and that serotonin is a neuroinhibitor. So it's slowing down the transmission of information. Don't really like that idea. You don't necessarily have a SSRI deficiency. You're more likely to have a progesterone deficiency. They've also used gabapentin and pregabalin. We talked about that last week, related to dementia and brain function. Estrogen and testosterone are great for brain function. Gabapentin's not. More to come. Stay tuned for Health Talk.
Doctor, my eyes have seen the years and the slow parade of years without crying.
Lowry Drug on Harkness Road in Statesville was established in 1959. We are a traditional family pharmacy with a state-of-the-art compounding laboratory. We offer a full line of medical equipment supplies, including CPAP scooters, lift chairs, and oxygen. We also have a full line of supplements, nutritionals, herbs, essential oils, homeopathics, and more. Come see us. We're talking about non-hormonal interventions for symptoms. One of the things that happens a lot with women related to menopause and even younger women is something called estrogen dominance. And basically that means estrogen is out of balance with progesterone. So menopause is more or less associated with the concept of low estrogen. You're in menopause with low estrogen. That's not always the case. And keep in mind, hormones can be made in fat cells of the body, and they can also be stored there. So when we replace estrogen, we may not completely have the whole picture, and that's where some of that testing comes in. But most of the research is focused on the concept of an estrogen deficiency. So if you think that and you just give estrogen alone, you're actually increasing basically the imbalance in the tissue level that's already there. So one of the things that that comes up, there was a study in 2024 of the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, sought out to understand how hormone replacement affects hormones in postmenopausal women. And they were looking at hormone concentrations in the bloodstream, but also in fat tissue. They were using oral hormone replacement, and this was with estrogen. Not really the best way to do that, but nonetheless. So they measured estrogen, and there's more than one estrogen, by the way. So different types of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone in the fat, subcutaneous fat, just under the skin, and visceral fat, which is deeper fat, as well as the blood, and their findings indicate that the hormone replacement therapy drastically elevates the estrogen within fat tissue. So, and keep in mind that hormones are fat soluble, so they are stored in fat if there's too much. So estrogen levels in this test went up. Testosterone actually decreased, which is kind of interesting. So there was a shift in the estrogen dominance within fat tissue. So that can be an issue, particularly if you're not taking progesterone. So the concept of the body making hormones in fat tissue is called endocrine with an with IN instead of the E, and so these sex steroid metabolisms in fat tissue, kind of perpetuate themselves. So these ratios in hormone replacement become really important, and that's where testing comes in. So you're trying to look at the values and the balance between the hormones, and so in normal labs, estrogen, there's a range for that, and then there's a range for progesterone, there's a range for testosterone. And you want them to kind of be in the same range. So if they're all low, as an example, you'd kind of like to see them all low, if you will, because that's a little more balanced. If you see one in the middle and one that's low or one that's high, it's not balanced. So that's what we're striving for. And then, just to complicate things, we have this issue of endocrine disruption hormones, pesticides, herbicides, and there was a recent article about pesticide exposure reducing the reproductive ability of men, and we're of course seeing that in women, but this concept of sperm health is emerging, and apparently men are producing fewer, weaker, and less mobile sperm than men of the past. So it kind of signals a problem, obviously for mankind in the future. While lifestyles are damaging, one of the things that comes up is that this low level of agricultural products in our food supply, particularly of interest, is organophosphates, like Roundup, residues on foods. It's pretty well known now that wheat and oats and potatoes are sprayed with glycophosphates before they're harvested. Not only that, of course, they're used in other agricultural processes, pre-planting of foods. So basically, we've got these residues that are neurotoxic chemicals, and so the exposure accumulates, and these too are stored in fat tissue. So for men, and women, it's not just affecting their reproductive abilities, but it's impacting their cellular machinery, if you will, responsible for energy and repair. And so overall, this is disrupting reproductive biology. So, and the other thing about this is not just from heavy occupational exposure like farmers. It's happening to everyone who's not really careful with their diet. So, this study actually revealed a direct link between pesticide exposure and reduced sperm motility. Men with higher levels of pesticide metabolites, like organophosphates, had much poor quality of sperm. So and even a decrease in any motility obviously decreases the likelihood of conception. And I would say that conception issues are now pretty epidemic in many ways. I think everyone probably knows of someone that has had issues with this. So one of the mechanisms with this basically is disrupted calcium signaling in the mitochondria, which is the energy producing organelles of the cell. But think about this: if it's happening in the reproductive area, it's also happening on a body-wide basis. So these chemicals impact the enzymes that control this calcium, and then the calcium floods into the cells, and damage happens. This also happens to damage the cellular membrane. It's a process called lipid peroxidation, which basically is the oxidation of the fats in the cellular membrane. This is happening in sperm cells, but it's going to be happening body-wide for everybody. So the damage is body-wide, basically. Stay tuned for more health talk.
Doctor, my eyes have seen the years and
Welcome back to Health Talk, talking about chemicals affecting hormone balance, endocrinology. Basically, when you get into this, and you're damaging the cells, you're damaging the membranes of the cells. So that makes the things inside the cell, like DNA, vulnerable to injury. Now we're talking about affecting the fertility and the health of the offspring. Very troubling. So is something to pay attention to in this world of complexity of hormones and other things, chemicals in this world. Ran across this health news article, Epoch Times, talking about water intake fueling your stress levels. So, and basically it's not too much, but basically too little. How much water you drink can shape how you deal with stress. Adults that drink less water had a 50% higher surge in the stress hormone cortisol when under pressure. This was a new study in the Journal of Applied Physiology. Dehydration doesn't, just affect your overall physical health, which we've talked about this before. That hydration is tremendously important for your overall health. So it's not just affecting your overall body health, but it also actually makes your stress response stronger. Over time, high cortisol levels have been linked to heart disease, kidney issues, and diabetes. People who drink less fluid each day had higher cortisol. It spiked more than 50% higher than those who stayed well hydrated. And this is a pretty big deal. So it just makes you wonder why less fluid. What would the mechanism for that be? And I think it may be. I mean, one of the thoughts that comes to mind is it's just more concentrated, so it can have a stronger effect. They took healthy men and women, divided them into two groups. After a week of monitoring hydration, they had to give an unprepared speech, in front of poker-faced judges, so to speak, followed by a difficult math test to measure how their body responded to stress. Both groups felt stress. They showed faster heart rates, and their cortisol levels increased. So high cortisol, and by the way, cortisol is important. It's an important steroid hormone. But once again, when things get out of balance, then that becomes the problem. And by the way, all these steroid hormones are made from what some people call the bad cholesterol, the LDL cholesterol. From LDL cholesterol, you make all these steroid hormones, your progesterone, estrogens, testosterone, cortisol, fluid bouncing hormones, all of these things becomes pretty important. So, as the body starts to lose fluids, your body makes this water-saving hormone that basically flips on the stress system. It's called vasopressin, which is also called an antidiuretic hormone. But anyway, it allows the kidney to hang on to water, but it also signals the brain to release more cortisol. So this hormone, this vasopressin, also impacts circadian rhythm, pain perception, and memory. So one of the side effects of also being dehydrated is having more inflammation, more joint inflammation. Keep in mind your whatever toxins are there are more concentrated, causing more inflammation of the joints. Also, they had also tested another type of hormone. So people that drink less water, they have this other hormone that basically has been linked to a greater risk of metabolic disease, including type 2 diabetes and heart disease. So chronic dehydration, is definitely a major health risk. There's an overlap between basically water regulation and all of these hormones. So dehydration over time can cause chronic stress, which is definitely a big negative for your overall health. Notably, they said thirst turns out to not be a reliable indicator of the need to hydrate. So just because you're not thirsty does not mean that you don't need water. During the study, people who drank a lot less water said they didn't feel thirstier. So they also would mention that drinking enough water isn't a cure for anxiety per se, but it's a simple way of supporting your body's stress system. The study does not prove that drinking more water lowers cortisol in real life, but there is definitely a link to hydration, particularly less hydration, and chronic health issues. So stay hydrated. The water needs definitely vary from individual to individual in situations. If you're sweating more, sweating less, this is something to pay attention to. Lastly, one of the interesting things about hormone balancing in men and women is that there's a difference in how hormones impact immune function. Autoimmune conditions are disproportionately impacting women over men. Women are 2.5 times more likely to develop multiple sclerosis and 9 times more likely to develop lupus than men. So every cell of your body carries XX chromosomes if you're female, or XY chromosomes if you're male. Basically, it's the genetic blueprint that actually influences your immune system. X chromosomes carries many immune-related genes, so women are effectively have a double dose of basic immune instructions. The strengths, this double dose can be helpful against viruses, but also raises the risk of immune system related things and your immune system turning against your body. Hormones, of course, are a key factor. Ones we just talked about. They do far more than regulate reproduction, acting on every cell, dictating which genes turns on and turns off. Pretty fascinating stuff in that these hormones are chemical messengers in the bloodstream. Estrogen can amplify antibody production, boosting your defense against pathogens. But at certain levels, it can spark inflammation and drive autoimmune conditions, and that goes back to the imbalance of the estrogen and progesterone. Testosterone tends to dampen immune activity, making men a little more vulnerable to infections, which men could typically face more severe outcomes from viral-type diseases, while women live with higher rates of more chronic autoimmune disorders. So, it's another example, if you will, of some of the complexity of the body and how things work. And so I think the best strategy is balancing the internal environment as much as you can. And that means trying to eliminate as much toxic overload that you have, things coming in. Diet, hydration plays a huge role in that. So it's one of those things that it's really difficult to think about managing or micromanaging all these pieces, these hormones, in terms of your overall health. But it is possible, and what you're doing is trying to recreate a balance so that your body has the ability, and you're facilitating the ability to self-heal, which is basically how the body works. So it's a matter of trying to remove roadblocks for healing and provide a conducive environment, internally, externally, for the healing to take place. A lot to consider. I hope this information is helpful to you and give you some things to think about. If you have other questions, you can reach us at Lowry Drug, and have a great weekend and enjoy this beautiful fall weather. This is Fred Lowry, pharmacist and doctor of natural medicine, Lowry Drug in Statesville.